The letter arrived on a quiet morning, thin and harmless, yet it carried a truth that would shake an entire community. No one in the neighborhood knew that one inheritance would soon expose everything they believed was theirs. When Daniel Harper inherited 1,000 acres of land from his late grandfather, he expected old fences, tax papers, and memories, not conflict. The property sat just beyond a peaceful suburban HOA, a place known for trimmed lawns and strict rules. Daniel planned to live quietly, walking the land his grandfather once protected. But weeks later, survey markers appeared along the edge of the neighborhood, and that was when the HOA noticed him. The board sent a formal notice accusing Daniel of trespassing, claiming he had crossed into HOA-managed land. They demanded fines and threatened legal action. Daniel didn't argue. He didn't explain. He simply requested a full title search and historic land survey, something his grandfather had always insisted on preserving. As the documents arrived, the truth began to unfold slowly, like a shadow stretching across the streets. Maps from decades earlier showed clear boundaries, long before the HOA existed. Deeds revealed that the neighborhood roads, the clubhouse, even the manicured park, all sat within the original acreage Daniel now owned. The HOA had been built on land that was never legally transferred. Each page confirmed what seemed impossible. Daniel didn't smile. He didn't celebrate. He understood what this meant for hundreds of families. Instead of responding to the HOA's threats, Daniel stayed silent, letting them escalate. Fines increased. Letters grew harsher. Neighbors whispered. The board scheduled an emergency meeting to deal with the outsider. But while they prepared their arguments, Daniel prepared something far more powerful. He gathered records, photos, and legal confirmations that would soon force everyone to face a reality they never imagined. As the HOA meeting date approached, Daniel received one final notice demanding immediate compliance. He folded the letter carefully, knowing this was the last warning they would ever send him. What the HOA didn't realize was that the land beneath their homes already belonged to him, and the moment he spoke, nothing would ever be the same again. The HOA meeting was packed that evening, every seat filled with neighbors who believed rules gave them power. None of them noticed Daniel standing quietly near the back, listening as his name was repeated with frustration. The HOA president spoke confidently, announcing new fines and legal action against the trespasser. Applause followed. Daniel waited until the room settled, then stepped forward with a calm voice that cut through the noise. He introduced himself simply, not as an enemy, but as the legal owner of the land in question. Laughter echoed across the room. Some rolled their eyes. Others whispered insults. Daniel placed a folder on the table and asked the board to review certified land surveys, inheritance records, and county archives. The president refused, calling the documents fake. That was when Daniel revealed he had already submitted everything to the county recorder's office. Silence replaced laughter. Faces stiffened. The room felt smaller. One board member nervously pulled out a phone and began checking public records. Another excused herself and rushed outside. Daniel didn't raise his voice. He explained that the HOA had been collecting dues, selling homes, and enforcing rules on land they never legally owned. The streets, the clubhouse, even the decorative entrance sign all sat inside his inherited acreage. Panic spread quietly. Questions turned into arguments. The president demanded proof of intent. Daniel replied that his grandfather had allowed development verbally, trusting a handshake that was never honored in writing. That trust died with him. Now the truth had surfaced. Daniel assured the homeowners he didn't want chaos. He wanted clarity and fairness. But the board understood something terrifying. Their authority depended on land rights they didn't have. As the meeting ended abruptly, the board retreated into private discussion, while residents stood confused, realizing their homes were tied to a mistake decades old. Outside, under the streetlights, Daniel looked at the quiet houses lining the road. He knew the hardest part wasn't proving ownership. It was deciding what came next, and the HOA had no idea how little control they truly had left. Within days, official notices appeared on doors across the neighborhood, not from the HOA, but from the county. Verification requests. Boundary confirmations. Legal clarifications. Panic arrived quietly, one envelope at a time. The HOA tried damage control, sending emails insisting everything was under control. But the board members avoided eye contact, and meetings were cancelled without explanation. Daniel, meanwhile, met privately with property attorneys and local officials, confirming what the documents already said. The HOA had no legal standing over the land beneath the homes. Rumors spread fast. Some neighbors blamed Daniel. Others blamed the board. Longtime residents felt betrayed, realizing their trust had been misplaced for years. One evening, a group of homeowners approached Daniel directly. Not with anger, but fear. They asked if he planned to evict them, tear down roads, or shut off access. Daniel listened carefully. He explained that ownership didn't mean destruction. He had no intention of uprooting families. But he also made it clear that the HOA's power structure was finished. Rules enforced without ownership meant nothing now. Dues stopped coming in. Fines went unpaid. The HOA office locked its doors. The board attempted one final move, filing a lawsuit claiming implied consent. The judge dismissed it within minutes, citing clear historical evidence. The ruling spread quickly, and with it came relief mixed with embarrassment. The HOA dissolved almost overnight, its authority erased by facts no one could deny. Daniel offered residents a choice. They could form a voluntary community agreement with transparent terms, or live freely without forced control. Many chose freedom. Lawns became personal again. Signs disappeared. The neighborhood felt different, lighter, but one issue remained unresolved. The infrastructure, the roads and shared spaces, all belonged to Daniel now. He hadn't decided what to do with them. And while residents adjusted to life without HOA pressure, they wondered how long Daniel's patience would last. As summer arrived, the neighborhood stood at a crossroads. Peace had returned, but uncertainty lingered. Daniel knew his next decision would define not just the land, but the legacy his grandfather left behind. The turning point came when Daniel invited every homeowner to a public meeting, not in an office, but on the open land itself. No podium. No board. Just truth, spoken plainly under the sky his grandfather once walked beneath. Daniel explained that the land was never about control. It was about responsibility. His grandfather believed land should serve people, not trap them. Daniel offered long-term easements for homes and roads at fair, symbolic rates, protecting families while keeping ownership clear. No hidden rules. No surprise fines. No intimidation. Relief washed over the crowd. Some residents apologized. Others thanked him openly. What once felt like an invasion now felt like protection. The neighborhood began rebuilding trust, not through authority, but through understanding. Children played freely again. Conversations replaced complaints. The former HOA president never attended the meeting. She resigned quietly and moved away weeks later, leaving behind a reputation shattered by her own arrogance. Her attempts to control land she didn't own became a cautionary tale shared across nearby communities. Daniel finalized the agreements legally and transparently, setting an example that spread far beyond the neighborhood. Other HOAs reviewed their own histories, afraid of discovering similar truths. The county praised Daniel's approach, calling it rare and responsible. As the sun set that evening, Daniel walked the roads that once symbolized conflict. Now they represented something better. Not ownership alone, but fairness earned through patience. The land felt at peace again. The residents returned to their homes knowing the ground beneath them was secure at last. But the story didn't end there. Daniel still held thousands of acres untouched beyond the neighborhood, and plans his grandfather never lived to see. What he would do next would surprise everyone, proving that power doesn't come from rules or titles, but from knowing when to stand firm, and when to lead with integrity. Weeks passed, and the neighborhood slowly transformed into something no HOA meeting had ever created. Without constant warnings and threats, people began speaking to each other again, not as rule followers, but as neighbors. Daniel remained visible, walking the land, answering questions, and listening more than he spoke. He funded basic road maintenance himself, refusing repayment. That single act changed how people saw him. He wasn't a hidden landlord or silent owner. He was present, responsible, human. Trust, once broken by the HOA, began to rebuild through simple actions. Property values stabilized instead of crashing, something critics claimed would never happen. In fact, interest increased. Buyers liked the transparency, the lack of hidden control, and the clarity of ownership. Realtors began using the story as proof that not all land disputes end in disaster. One afternoon, Daniel received a letter from the former HOA's legal team requesting negotiation. He declined politely. The time for power games had passed. Their authority was gone, and everyone knew it. Silence followed, permanent and final. At a community gathering, a resident asked Daniel why he didn't profit more aggressively. He smiled and spoke of legacy. His grandfather had believed land should protect families, not pressure them. Daniel chose to honor that belief, even when it cost him financially. As dusk settled, laughter echoed through the streets. The same roads once used to enforce rules now carried freedom instead. But beyond the neighborhood lay untouched acres. Quiet and waiting. Daniel knew the story wasn't finished. The land still had a voice, and soon, it would speak again. News of the dissolved HOA traveled fast, spreading across nearby counties and online forums. People reached out to Daniel with stories of their own battles, asking how he stayed calm when power was pushed against him. Daniel never framed it as victory. He called it correction. The system hadn't protected people, so the truth had stepped in instead. County officials referenced the case in training sessions, warning HOAs about assumptions made without verified ownership. Quietly, changes began elsewhere. The neighborhood continued improving, not because someone enforced it, but because people cared again. Gardens appeared. Porches filled with conversation. The land felt alive in a way it never had under constant pressure. Daniel watched from a distance, satisfied but thoughtful. Then came an offer. A developer proposed buying a large portion of the remaining acreage at a massive price. It would have made Daniel wealthy beyond expectation. But it would also erase fields his grandfather once farmed. Daniel declined without hesitation. Instead, he announced plans for conservation easements and limited family use parcels, ensuring the land remained protected. The decision shocked many. Profit was expected. Principle was not. The residents supported him unanimously. What started as fear had turned into loyalty built on trust. The neighborhood wasn't just living on his land anymore. They were standing with him. As night fell over the acres, Daniel stood alone, realizing the true power he held wasn't ownership. It was choice. And with one final decision left to make, he prepared to close a chapter that would be remembered far longer than any HOA ever could. Months later, the final agreements were signed, recorded, and shared publicly for anyone to see. No secrets. No fine print. Just clarity, preserved in writing where it always belonged. The land was protected. The homes were secure. And the HOA existed only as a lesson told in quiet conversations. Daniel placed a small plaque near the original entrance road, honoring his grandfather, not as an owner, but as a steward. People stopped there often, reflecting on how close everything came to collapse. The neighborhood thrived without control, proving something powerful. Order didn't come from threats. It came from respect. Children grew up without warning letters taped to doors. Families felt rooted again. The ground beneath them finally felt honest. Daniel eventually moved into a modest home on the edge of the property. Not above anyone, but among them. His presence was calm, steady, and reassuring. The land had found balance. The story spread online, labeled unbelievable by those who feared losing control. But for those who lived it, the truth was simple. Ownership matters. Transparency matters more. And power, when misused, always collapses under truth. As the sun set over the 1,000 acres, Daniel knew the inheritance wasn't land alone. It was responsibility fulfilled. And that made everything worth it, and that was the final twist in this unbelievable HOA story. If you love the drama, don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop a comment sharing your thoughts. It really helps this channel grow.